All right, this is our first forum in this spring session, so thank you everybody for coming. Thomas Levene is our speaker, and Thomas is going to. The title of Thomas's speech is "Can We Change the Weather?" I believe Thomas is going to be talking about how, if we can change the weather, how could we change the weather? And if we can change the weather, have we been changing the weather? And if we can change the weather, why would we want to do that? Or maybe why would we not want to do that? I think Thomas is going to be giving a couple of some ideas of some different technologies that can be used to affect weather patterns or atmospheric precipitation and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's give it to Thomas.
Okay, thanks very much, Ethan. So basically that's what it's about. For many, the idea, can we control the weather? Well, the idea of controlling our surroundings to suit our tastes and requirements is a natural one if you think about it. It's as mundane as choosing the type of food you want to eat for lunch, choosing the shelter, the drink, the layout of your house, This is all natural things, even the partners that suit you best. These all so we try and manipulate and control our surroundings. So why not and even we can control our micro living climates. So you can see today it was cold, so I put the heater on. And in that way it's a form of you're changing the climate, you're changing your microclimate. And no doubt later in the summer I'll put the AC on and I'll be nice and cold. I'll be nice and comfortable. So, in this talk I'll outline the three main technologies we have for controlling the macro climate, the weather outside. And these all form under what we call now geoengineering. And I'll talk about the history of geoengineering, and I'll also highlight the effects these technologies have on the weather modification and other things. So what is geoengineering? Well, in a nutshell, it's a technical word to anything to do with artificially changing the weather system in some way. That's all it is. So it may be adding a chemical into the atmosphere. It may be putting electrical charges up in the atmosphere to create different weather systems. So I'll be looking, there's three main ones, but unfortunately you've probably not heard much about it. Why is that? Well, in my view, it's one of the most important subjects we don't know enough about, and you won't see it in the popular media or in grad or high school books, as far as I know. Okay? It doesn't mean to say it's not important, though. Okay, so I want to talk about three main types. We have cloud seeding, HARP, and SAT, Strategic Aerosol Technology. So let's go through first one. Cloud seeding. Cloud seeding basically is adding a chemical into the atmosphere to create clouds or to dissipate clouds, to make clouds go away. So basically, if they want rain, you can put a chemical into the atmosphere and there might be a higher chance of it raining. So the history goes back from November 1946. Dr. Bernard van Goot discovered that microscopic crystals of silver iodide nucleate water vapour to form ice crystals. And this is the start of cloud seeding. These ice crystals can then form rain or snow or whatever. So General Electric was actually the first company to do experiments with cloud seeding. In 1946, Dr. Van Goot again worked with another guy called Dr. Irving Langmuir in New York in General Electric Company. Their initial work on cloud seeding was funded by the company, not the US government. what the management found about cloud seeding, they were concerned about the possibility of causing harmful weather conditions. That, and I quote, "It was recognised that possibility of liability for damage from cloud seeding experiments was a very worrisome hazard in this form of cloud experimentation, since such a threat to the share owner's money would not be balanced by any known gain to the company's products or business. There was a great reluctance to incur risks of uncertain but potentially great magnitude." So basically what they're saying is that it's not reliable. And even today, cloud seeding isn't reliable. But nevertheless, it has been used, and it's still being used. And there is evidence that, on October 13th, 1947, they seeded a hurricane where the US military basically, as part of a Cirrus program, dropped 80 kilograms of dry ice into a hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean, safely off the east coast of the USA. The hurricane changed direction and travelled inland, where it just totally messed up parts of Georgia, property damage, all kinds of stuff. The US military classified the data from the seeding of the hurricane to frustrate litigation, because there's lots of law problems. People were trying to sue basically General Electric for seeding the hurricane, causing the property damage. There's also cases of cloud seeding in New Mexico. But like I say, it's not 100% successful. According to one Dr. Grant, he says basically perhaps 10% extra rainfall result from cloud seeding. So it's not going to create these massive, obviously the technology is getting better, but it's still not 100% reliable. Points about cloud seeding. Well, it's happening a lot of NATO countries, and even countries like China, they're famous for cloud seeding. China's always trying to do it. They've got problems with drought and in parts of China, and this is a way they're trying to use to create rain. The problem with it is that you're putting chemicals up into the atmosphere for a start. And what goes up must come down. And there's not been a lot of scientific research done, not enough anyway, to say what are the actual effects of this, the water being contaminated by these particles. So this is a big worry. Now, you may not have heard of weather modification systems, but I'll tell you, it's a massive, massive business. If you I did a search on weather modification equipment, and I got 285,000 hits. It's huge. 285,000 hits. There's even private companies that will boast on their websites that they can seed clouds and make hail or snow or whatever they want to make. They can create this, that's part of their service. In the western United States alone, there are over 60 weather modification programs going on, all without much regulation. So they're allowed to do it. And what happens is that, for example, in Wyoming, they wanted more snow on the mountains. So they did a program to get more cloud seeding program, which created snow on the Wyoming mountains in the USA to create water for San Francisco or something. That was very successful. However, it took, now parts of Colorado are receiving, droughts. So it's not, there's a plus and minus, thing going on here. The fact that, people are allowed to put chemicals up into the atmosphere unregulated is a form of concern. Okay, so my guess is there's about hundreds all over the world happening, so there's nothing new, but you probably won't hear about it in the mainstream media. Secondly, Second one I want to talk about is stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, or CAG. This is what I can basically call artificial cloud making. Okay, so the first one is to create snow, rain mainly, or even hail. This one is actually to create clouds. Edward Teller, who was a scientist who actually invented the hydrogen bomb, he was the first thought about the idea to spray minute particles of aluminium or aluminum, if you're American, into the atmosphere to deflect UV rays from the sun coming out. So what will happen is you put these particles in the atmosphere and it will deflect UV rays up into the troposphere and ionosphere, but still allow for the Earth's heat to come through. This is a part of the global warming idea. And we can see, there's patents there. There's patent 5,003,186 Hughes aircraft patent to inject a way to inject this aluminium into the atmosphere. It's a very fine white talcum-like powder of aluminium oxide, barium oxide and other oxides for the stated purpose of reducing global warming. It is dangerous. We don't know what the effects are. No one knows really what the effects of putting up these chemicals into the atmosphere are. But it has been intimated they can be used as exotic weaponry. The Space Preservation Act, October 2, 2001, introduced the elimination of exotic weaponry, including banned weather modification weapons such as chemtrails, like making clouds too. Anyway, but as you may know, and with talks like this, there's more public awareness happening. More and more people begin to look up in the skies. Is that normal? What's happening here? There's more and more stuff on the internet, and more research is being done. Recently, in February 2010, geoengineering scientists from around the world met in San Diego. One of the main topics of discussion at the American Association for Advancement of Science annual meeting was, can geoengineering save us from global warming? And as a result of that meeting, geoengineering scientists are researching creating an aluminium shield around our planet, dumping nearly 10 to 20 megatrons of aluminium oxide into our skies and upper atmosphere. Well, if I tell you aluminium's a poison, and if it's ingested over time, there's just a catalogue of things it can do to our immune systems and our bodies. I'm not particularly enamoured by that idea, all right? And I hope you're not either. There's been a lot of controversy as to whether these artificial clouds or chemtrails or whatever you like to call them, persistent contrails, do they exist? But I think there's now substantial evidence and documentation that SAG programs have a devastating effect on our health and our environment. So I'll give you a case study. That's the best way to go through this. A woman called Rosalind Peterson from California, she highlights this problem, and she's talked at the UN about persistent chemtrails. Before she was doing that, she was working for the US government as a crop adjudication officer for the state of California. So she'll travel 1,000 miles, and as the farmers are subsidised by the government, if they lose their crops, then they can get money back, basically. And what she was finding was that there was a lot of claims for compensation. And she was also seeing, that, crops were having in trees, and all kinds of herbal life were having a rough time. So what she did is she studied FAA flight patterns for the whole state of California and beyond, and she concluded that the planes responsible for the artificial clouds were from intra-flights, not commercial aircraft. The flight paths of these planes were in a loop and would go back and forth like this. So, like commercial airlines, to save money, you want to go to as quickly from A to B as possible. So what you do is you go in a straight line. But these were intra-flights, and they have to be marked by the FAA, and they were going round and looping back and forth. In the area that she lived, she also noticed that there were strange formations, like these kind of formations, which I will show you later, and that there was no commercial air traffic going through that area. So why was there so much cloud cover? Furthermore, she also collected water tests from 1971 to up until this present day for the whole California, and showed days of heavy spraying or chemtrailing coincided with spikes in chemicals present in the water. And hey presto, what chemicals were in there? Aluminium and barium. And magnesium. These are poisons, and they have a huge negative effect on humans and wildlife alike. So, she also went one step further and points to a veil of secrecy, a cover-up, if you like, coordinated program that explains these projects are covered up by NASA, the meteorological weathermen, and educational institutions. Furthermore, she claims NASA can see the chemtrails on radar, yet still call them weather fronts. So you've got these cloud formations happening on radar, and the NASA told the weather people, yeah, you can say that's a front. Well, it's not a weather front. It's a man-made, artificially created front from a chemical process that's happening. So she thought that was very misleading, and she also thought that the indoctrination of getting children to count the clouds seemed to be a bit strange as well. From 1989 to 1990 something, the NASA actually got school children to count chemtrails. When she said, well, I have all the equipment, so my team, we can do a much better job, they said, well, no, you're not as reliable as children. That's what NASA said. You're not as reliable as children. So, why would they want to do that? One possible explanation is they want to try and normalise these artificial clouds as normal for children, so as they're growing up. And we can see that in adverts, TV shows, and even movies like Toy Story 3, where you actually see subliminal, you see these contrails in the background. So it's almost as if, and I've seen them in Taiwan adverts as well. Okay, so that's SAG. Now we'll talk about, these technologies are quite powerful, and they can also be used for other non-weather changing technologies. It is likely the US military is funding these weather modification technologies and possibly using them in time of war. I quote the document Owning the Weather 2025 by the US military, shows their aims in black and white. Brzezinski is a Trilateral Commission member, but one of the founders of the Trilateral Commission. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but basically it's one of the main groups where the most powerful people meet usually in secrecy, to make decisions that we're not informed about. And Brzezinski, who was, I can talk more about him, but he wrote a book, and Between Two Ages, and I quote his book: "Technologies will make available to the leaders of major nations technologies for conducting secret warfare at which the bare minimum of security forces need be informed. Technology of weather modification can be employed to produce prolonged periods of drought or storms, for example." And this was in 1977, he wrote that book. And we're going to talk about one of the technologies now. The third and final one is called HARP. HARP is a base in Alaska. It was started in 1993, and it's to do with electricity. And there's been a lot of controversy over this system because it's said to be a research institute, whereas many people may be thinking it does a bit more than just research. HARP anyway stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. This technology was based on the work of Nikola Tesla, which I'm sure you've heard about. He's one of the pioneers, I guess, of modern geoengineering, probably electricity, he would be remembered by. He was a Serbian immigrant who came to the US at the turn of the century. Tesla proved to be one of the greatest scientific geniuses of the 20th century. He worked with Edison and Westinghouse during the infancy of electricity, and Tesla also invented alternating current. But what he's not lesser known for is actually experimenting with electromagnetic technology and the Earth's gravitational field. And what he found was, what he discovered was that the ionisation, where you put electricity into the atmosphere, the ionisation of the atmosphere would alter if it was charged with radio transmissions between 10 to 20 hertz. He also discovered it can cause both positive and negative ionisation of the atmosphere by changing the frequency of the hertz. So this actually creates different effects. With positive ionisation of the atmosphere, people become lethargic and tired, and negative ionisation, people become more active and energetic. So basically, it's better to have negative ionisation as opposed to positive. Tesla also pioneered work on pneumatic small-scale earthquake generation. So there you go. His electromagnetic oscillator is a mechanical oscillator conceived of in 1898, and it's referred to as an earthquake machine. And the machine which Tesla tested was small, around 7 inches long, and something you could put into your overhead pocket. And he says in 1998, Tesla's New York lab was nearly shaken to pieces with this little device. Operated only 5 pounds of air pressure, acting against a special pneumatic piston device. The whole assembly was designed to be powered by steam pressure. Tesla's technology, though, could be the basis for the HARP program, and others like it all around the world. So,
5 more minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, good. So we can come back. So, from my understanding, what HARP does, it essentially focuses a huge amount of electricity in one area, perhaps over 1 billion hertz, into part of our atmosphere, our ionosphere, or our troposphere, or into the ground. Now, if it's done into the ground, that can cause an earthquake, possibly. So, it's interesting to know that there were spikes in the release of these hertz at the same time there was an earthquake in New Zealand. There were spikes in this HARP instrument here. It's all controversial, but you know, who knows? But you know, it is proof. There is proof that if you can send a radio wave down